Welcome back to Greels, Reels, everyone. I'm your host, Robert Greeley, and today, this week, we have another GG's alumnus. I am so excited to welcome Kaly Soro to the podcast. You Ottawa Volleyball alumni. How's it going?
I'm doing good, Rob. I'm doing good.
It's nice to see you again. It's been a minute, of course. Yeah, how are things in Ottawa? I know, obviously, lockdown and all that not so fun stuff.
Honestly, yes, lockdown hasn't been fun, especially for me, Miss Social Butterfly, who likes to be everywhere and do everything. But we're managing. I mean, I am extremely fortunate to be working at a university that has allowed me to keep my job throughout this time. I know a lot of programs that have taken a lot of cuts. And we were actually lucky enough to be able to practice a lot this year. Even regardless of the on and offs, and nobody caught COVID, nobody got sick, protocols were followed to the T. So it was really cool to see kind of the team be really resilient to practicing and continuing to kind of hustle through this year, especially adapting to like the online learning. Like these kids are some awesome kids, to be very honest. They've been doing their best, and it's kind of just been motivating as a coach to watch them do that as well. So
Now, obviously, you've gone through the motions of being a student athlete. I'm curious, how do you think you would hold up right now if you were first year coming in?
yikes, I don't think I'd be as good as these kids.
Yeah.
Just because like I loved, like I had to go to class. Like that
Mhm.
was I needed to make a connection. I needed to talk to people. Like study groups were like my niche. Like I loved learning that way. So I get cool. Like it would be nice to kind of just lay in bed at 8 a.m. instead of get up and go to a class in -30. Like there are some benefits, definitely. But also like this Zoom fatigue that everyone's talking about is 100% real. Like I don't know how I would stand staring at a screen for 10 hours of my day and then going back and then doing it again on exams. And with all the technical difficulties that people run into every 5 minutes on Zoom, whether it's a frozen screen or like you didn't hit the mute button on time or you exit out, like who's the host, all those little details would have probably got me pretty frustrated in my first year. But these kids, like again, as I said, like these kids are handling it like they've been through a pandemic 10 times before. So I can't say I'd be as good as them if you go back 6, 7 years now.
um, yeah, you never want to date yourself. It's kind of crazy when you look back and it's like, oh, I've already been graduated for one, two, then what? Maybe not.
It's been a lot. It's been a while. It's been a while.
And there's two things that are really interesting. Obviously, the walks in the Ottawa winters to campus, that is definitely a downfall. That is never too fun. Ottawa winters are super cold.
I was never a fan. So I grew up like I did 10 years in Vancouver where there's no snow. Like absolutely none. Maybe twice, 3 times, we'd go up north to like where my grandpa's from. My grandpa's from 100 miles, so it's like 6 hours north of Vancouver, and there's a lot of snow there. Great, but like you could choose to come back to Vancouver and just hang out in the wet rain for the rest of the year. Also, your car tires are fine. Like no, never any salty, crappy winter jackets. Like that was not a thing. And then my family was like, "Yeah, we're just heading over to Ottawa," and we moved, I think, in the summer. And we also didn't realize how humid it is in Ottawa in the summer. So all of us were like, where the heck did we decide to live? Like, it's +30. You could literally cut the air with a knife if you wanted to. That's how humid it felt. And then our first winter was just like unbearable. Like snow days, we didn't know what snow days were. And now -30 and like, throwing. I think that's the first winter that we went through. Every other weekend, we'd like do that thing where you boil water and you throw it out your window and watch it turn into snow. Like that was like a sibling, like, okay, Sunday morning, we're doing this. And that's what we did because we were just so fascinated and had never seen this type of snow and bad weather before. So it definitely took, I'm still not used to it even today.
No, fair enough. I mean, that was the biggest thing for me, just even going from Newfoundland to Ottawa. People are like, "Oh, like your winters are so much cold." And like, no, we just have crappy weather. Like it's inconsistent. Like it'll be snow, rain, summer, fall, all in one day, but it does not get this cold. Now,
Yeah.
what you mentioned with the Zoom fatigue too, which is interesting, and yeah, 10-hour days in classrooms and stuff like that. And now your meetings, even for virtual athletes, and I think of the people too, their escape sometimes and like their downtime was Netflix or TV shows or maybe even video games. So like more screen time. So now it's like how you used to kind of like take your break from the going to class and coming back and relaxing is now still with like again that like blue light screen on a laptop. So I can see how like that would really amplify that fatigueness part.
Yeah, absolutely. And even I felt that as a coach. Like sometimes you're like laying in bed, you're on Instagram, you're like, ah, or like TikTok came out, and I was like, oh my God, how did I just spend the last hour looking at random dogs do fun things on TikTok? Like, but like also what else is there to do? Like I can only go out and run so much, or you're not allowed to go to parks anymore. Like I can't just take a soccer ball and go kick it without being stopped by someone. Can't really see friends for that long anymore. So you're like, what can I do? How do I mean, for me also like books, like reading actual books has felt good because it's not a screen. It's like I'm actually flipping a page or something where I'm drawing, like to at least spend time like that. That's nice. I guess that's a good way to forget about Zoom and electronics, but it's such a key piece of how to like go about daily life now that we can't really escape our phones or our laptops. So
Mhm.
I feel that.
Yeah, it's definitely even just the course of all this is definitely rapid pace to the whole like usage of our screen times. And yeah, especially when you're on TikTok, you do not want to see that person come up being like, hold on, you've been scrolling for way too long. You're like, man, leave me alone, okay?
I've totally been there. There was some there. I think there was one where it was like, I don't know, someone had a phone and they're like, hey, look at the person who's been on their phone for the last hour watching and liking shit that they don't even know about. I was like, yeah, that was me. That was totally me. So
So we kind of got a little bit ahead of ourselves, but I just want to dial back to like your childhood and growing up, and I guess where the love for volleyball came and developed. Like, was that something that? So were you in BC first, then Ottawa, or did you go Ottawa, BC, Ottawa?
I actually, so I was born in Norway.
Okay.
Um, my family spent my parents met there. They spent 7 years in total there. But I spent 3 years and then we moved to Vancouver. And that's when my two other siblings were born. We stayed there 10 years. And then my mom worked for the airline and my dad's a musician. So we were using all the travel passes and stuff to get my dad, like he'd travel internationally to perform.
Mhm.
Um, but I guess Air Canada and Aeroplan split, and it was either relocate and keep your benefits, keep your travel benefits, or stay in Vancouver and lose all of the benefits. So luckily, my mom's best friend was in Ottawa, and we spoke French. We always my dad is fluent in French, so it just felt like the right thing to do. So we all packed our bags and moved to Ottawa, and I think in 2010 is when we originally moved here. So
Do you
a little
remember
bit of
much of Norway?
no, not really. I've been back a few times. Like we have family friends that who live there,
Yep.
but I don't remember too much. There's a few words that I can pick up every now and then, just because my parents would talk badly about us, like when they when they wanted to trash talk about their kids, like it'd be in Norwegian, so I'd pick up a few of those. But other than that, I'd love to go back again and visit, but with COVID and I'm not sure if
Mhm.
that's in the near future. But yeah, it's cool kind of upbringing. It's like something that people don't really expect to hear when they see me.
No, and I also too. I mean, BC. I love that province. It is such a beautiful spot in Canada.
Yeah, yeah. My grandparents and all my cousins are still there, so we go back. My mom is actually moving back to Vancouver, so they're all there right now. And we go back at least once every year. Like I still have some high school friends and some childhood friends from Vancouver, so I love the place. Like I really enjoy the scenery and the environment. Like it's cool to wake up and see mountains and ocean and all the above every day. But I don't know. There's something about Ottawa and the East End like that keeps me here. Like I don't think I'd move back to Vancouver. And I don't know if that's I think it's the French too. Like it's cool to be so immersed in it. Because in Vancouver, we thought we were all like, oh, look at us, we can speak French. And our French was like 25 times worse than anybody out here in Ottawa. They were like, what are you speaking? Like that was my first day at school. They're like, you don't speak French. It's so broken that I was like, oh, yikes. Here we go. So
Now, when you're in BC, are you picking up on the like sport environment there? Like, is that where you're more or less integrated into it all?
I so ooh, let me think back. When I was in BC, I grew up really playing soccer and dance. Like those were the two major items. So because my dad was a professional musician, we had we performed with him in Mexico, Scotland. I got to perform in front of Halle Berry. Just like
Oh,
some really cool opportunities there. Yeah, we had a professional like girls dance group that toured. So that
you realize how casual you just said that? I performed in front of Halle Berry. Yeah.
yeah, so it was funny. We had grouped. So the way that I got to that was we had grouped. We had done like how do you call that? Just like a combined show of with a men's marimba, like a boys marimba group, and then we were like the women, the girls, little dance African dance group. And one of the guys on the marimba group, their mom is a private makeup artist, and she happened to be Halle Berry's private makeup artist.
Okay.
So he was the godson. Like they named Halle Berry their godmother, and I guess she flew up to see the show that we had put together. And it was at the time that she was pregnant, so she came, and oh, she was so nice. Like you forget sometimes as a kid, like that celebrities are humans.
Hmm.
We were all like, oh my god, it's Halle Berry. Like even the parents, even our parents were like, oh my god, in tears. Oh, it's Halle Berry. And she was just like, oh, you guys are so great. Like I want my kid to become a dancer. Like my older sister is very like muscular, and the one thing that like Halle Berry said to her was, oh, your arms are just so great. Like they're so beautiful. And before that, my sister hated her arms, absolutely hated them. After that day, she's like, oh, Halle Berry. So like she'd walk around like her arms off, like, oh, these were Halle Berry's arms. It was funny. We also met, I don't know if you know, but Kyla Pratt, who is an actress in The Proud Family. She's like Penny Proud in The Proud Family.
Hmm.
Um, but that was a cool thing. Like she came to one of the concerts and was up dancing and stuff. And again, we were all like 13-year-old girls like, oh my god, it's so cool. So I did like the performance world was a lot of fun, and not many people got to experience that. So we've done, yeah, we went to Mexico for an international festival, and then another festival in Scotland. I think it was like one of the biggest youth music festivals. And I was lucky enough, well, or I was given the role of teacher. So I'd teach a few dance classes and workshops. So it's fun, and I still kind of do it every now and then. I help my dad out with the African dance. So that's been a prime part of my life. But in terms of sport, Soccer definitely. Like I was on my way up the chain in BC for soccer. I'd always played 2 years up just because I was probably longer than most kids. Um, but I yeah started playing there, made the I guess the premier team, and then once I made it, we decided to move. Um, so moved, and then that's where volleyball was kind of introduced once I moved to Ottawa. Like in Vancouver, I guess I wasn't in the right community. My mom had played volleyball in the past, but it was never something that I had thought of. So moving to Ottawa, I played 1 year with the Cumberland Cobras, the U18 team, and I was 16. We were lucky enough to go to a World Cup, like a World Cup, and place fifth. So we played against like Germany, Sweden. The finals was like a China and Sweden, and it was the coolest thing. Like he played in this massive like Premier League stadium, and then they had the bus tour to celebrate. But it was called the Gothia World Cup, and it's just like a massive youth um, international World Cup where it's just all soccer all the time. So that was a really cool experience. And the day that I got off the plane and landed here, I was like, I'm done. Quit, quit soccer. It's over. And decided to join the volleyball team. Yeah.
Now I know you're obviously really young at that age, but is there like resentment that like, oh, mom and dad, I don't want to move. I just like I'm climbing in soccer, like everything's going right for me right now. Like,
Oh yeah, definitely. Like I am very emotional. Just have always been. So I remember just like I think for like 2 days I'd lock myself in my room and just like wailed. Like I was like, oh my friends, I'm leaving all my friends. They're just gonna never talk to me again. I think I was more concerned about friendships than I was about sport. But it was tough uh to move somewhere, and like we had such a good group of people there that we had grown with for so long that I was like, oh, it sucks that we have to go somewhere else and meet new people. Like I was very much against it and stubborn about it. um so that totally has its place. Like I definitely was an emotional wreck for that.
well, I mean, it's not easy, right? Like you want to try and keep your friend group for as long as you possibly can, and sometimes it's like even if you go from like one school to the other school, like right across town, like that's all your friends are gone, let alone across the country.
Yeah, yeah, I totally, yeah, totally get that, right? And you're like, oh, I don't know. I was in just going into grade 9, so I was going directly into a high school here, and in BC, the school, how the French school system works is it's kindergarten to grade 12, like in one school, just because there wasn't enough just students attending. So I'd see everyone, like it was so small. Like we had a graduating class of two guys, and they unfortunately I don't think they either of them graduated that year. But
That's
moving
gotta be
from that,
tough.
yeah, I'm moving to that from that to De La Salle, which is downtown Ottawa. I think there was probably 1,200 kids, just from grade 9 to 12, right? So I'm going into like this crazy diverse school as well. Like we had arts, we had sports. We were mainly an arts school, but it's right downtown also. So you have like the rich community, you have people from the lower income communities. So it was like a melting pot of students and backgrounds and interests, which was really cool. Because at first when I had gone for my initial visit, I think someone had said like, yeah, it's like Step Up, like the movie Step Up was around the town. So she was like, yeah, you'll see like people like rap battling over here, and then like break dancing over there. And then we have choir who's downstairs. So I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like, and that's kind of what I got. Like, I'm not gonna lie, like day one of school, I was like, wow, there's like full on like rap battle to my left, and I never would have ever pictured this happening in BC in my old school. Like it wasn't, we just weren't big enough as a high school.
Mhm.
So that was a cool like culture shock almost.
Yeah, that's almost got to be sensory overload at that point. Like, how do you pick a group to join it, and almost that's where you spend your free time to now.
Right? And it was funny because I was like, okay, now I have to navigate like what? Like what group do I want to be a part of? Like I was originally at dance and then I started playing volleyball and then there was like the volleyball sports girls and then my friends who like rode the bus with me. And I was kind of just like this floater of a kid, right? Like, hey, I'll just hang out with you guys today. Tomorrow lunch this. And then I think in my grade 12 I spend more time with the volleyball coaches, so they're twins.
Mhm.
Um and I just hang out and we just speak volleyball all the time, every other lunch break. And that's kind of where, yeah, that's where I ended up hanging out the most, I think.
You mentioned when you got to Ottawa, like you people were saying that you had like broken French and like you spoke broken French. Did you like take that to heart, or did you almost think like, oh, like no way, like my French is fine?
Oh no, I definitely took that to heart. Like day
Okay.
one, I was like, I can't believe, because like I was one of the better French speakers in BC. Like my grades were good. Like I had
Mhm.
A's in all my classes. And to come to come to Ottawa, the first thing someone's like, you can speak English. Like this guy came up to me and he was like, so what's your name? Like you're new, whatever. And I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Start to speak French. Got a little nervous. And he was like, no, 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 stop speaking French. I don't understand it. You can speak it. And I was like, ouch. Like this is hard to take.
Mhm.
But I eventually got over it. And the more like it was more the slang that I couldn't pick up just because in BC, as soon as you walked out of the school, it'd be English. Like
Yeah.
there's no signs that force you to speak French. There's no hangout where people are just speaking French. Like in Ottawa, that was the major difference. It's like on lunch break, we'd all speak French. Oh, people were tuning into like what's happening in France and the influence in Montreal, right? Like all of that kind of was main and center, hot and center at De La Salle. So hanging out and being in that environment, of course, I learned over the time. But at the beginning, I definitely took it to heart. I was like, ah, crap. Like I thought I was good, but it's kind of an eye opener.
Yeah, I think that's one of my favorite things about Ottawa, though, too, is just like when you exit anywhere, like you're getting that French, like you're seeing the signs, you're hearing the guys talk and everything like that, right? So even though I always was 8 steps behind in the conversation, like I always tried to keep up as much as I could, and for the most part, that was where I would get like I've never been close to being bilingual, but that's the closest that I would ever get in terms of like advancing my French skills is just constantly hearing it. In Ottawa, like you're confronted with that daily.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's nice. The thing is with Ottawa compared to like let's say when I lived in Montreal, like people will switch to English or they'll pick up your English, they'll answer it in French. Like you can have the conversation in three different languages and people seem to just pick it up and go there. Like
Mm.
there's no resentment, there's no shame, there's no like they're just like, yeah, whatever language you can speak the best, like I'll try and adapt and vice versa. So that was something I found interesting then after once I got over my like, oh, I can't speak French very well. Once I got over my uncomfort, that's what I learned a lot from being in Ottawa. Yeah.
Did you do anything to like try and enhance in terms of like picking up like extra lessons, or like was it just something like okay, keep practicing it in the everyday life?
No, it was more keep practicing it in everyday life. Like the more
Mhm.
I don't know, at least for me, like the more that you put yourself in uncomfortable scenarios, like the better you deal with them. So I and De La Salle was all French. So I tried to just hang out and speak to more and more people who understood and spoke more French, to be very honest. And I never hesitated to ask for help. Like if it was like, could you review a paper? Could you tell me if this was off? Like I just asked whoever was willing to help me.
Yeah, because I guess they does LaSalle have like the U Ottawa bylaw where you can submit in both English and French, or do you have to submit your answers in French as well?
I think it's all French. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's definitely got to be a huge learning curve too, just with everything.
Yeah. It was definitely one of the bigger adjustments to make from moving to Vancouver to Ottawa, especially just the high school size,
Hmm.
um, and then the language. Yeah, the difference of just being immersed in it all the time, and it was like I guess one of my favorite things is in BC, like they penalize us for speaking English. Like they'd be like, stop speaking English in every class. And not once in my 4 years of high school here that did anybody get like a slap on the wrist for speaking in English. Like everyone spoke French.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so one thing too, you've talked about your dad, who's a musician. I've actually been lucky enough to meet your dad and actually see him perform. And so when you're telling me these stories, like honestly, I feel like I'm there because I do remember very one of the most wonderful individuals I think I've ever met. Absolutely incredible. So yeah, I want to dive in more just to being raised by
My
your father.
Soro. Yes. He honestly, my dad is one of my biggest inspirations. He has like all the energy that I think I have, like I 100% got it from him. Like all of it. But he is from a very small village in northern Ivory Coast and decided, well, I guess he was given the choice of three different career paths and decided music. So he kind of became a master in their village of this instrument. So it's called the balafon. And from there, he was able to leave, one of the first people to leave his village to then go on tour with the Ivorian National Ballet at the time. So he moved, I think it was at 16. He left the village, moved out on his own, was training with this national ballet for 4 or 5 years, toured across the world, like anywhere and everywhere, Europe, Thailand, I don't know, China. Um, I'm not sure if he ever came as far as Canada, but that's how he ended up in Norway. So taken also, my dad was illiterate, like he didn't go to school, has no background in it, but managed to make save enough money, educate himself all on his own, and create this life for himself. That doesn't seem too bad. Like he's very much a positive, like, yeah, this is life. If I do everything with a happy heart, like that's his motto. If I do everything with a happy heart, good things will come back to me. So that's kind of how
I love
he's
that.
missed a lot. Yeah. So it was always like, fais tout avec un bon cœur. Kaly, like, stop crying. You got to do everything with a good heart, and things will eventually fall into place. And if you work hard enough and you have your stuff in order, things will work out. So yeah, then he moved to Norway, was performing on TV, and landed himself a job at like one of their children's cultural centers, teaching dance and music. So he was renting a place, stayed there, learned the language, and then met my mom, and then had me. So that's kind of a little bit of background about him. But he, again, is just very simple guy, but very excited, very positive. Like he doesn't complain at all. I just he's my number one fan at a lot of the things that I do. So I'm very grateful to have him around, and now I get to see him every day. We're living together because of COVID, so it's been fun moving back home. It's been different. We do have our little things that we're particular on, and that's just comes with living with a parent. But
Mhm.
honestly, it could be much worse. So I'm very happy that this is what it is.
So, because when I met him, it was like was it at LaSalle, the school that we were at? It
I
was a
don't
high school, right?
It was a high school, definitely high
Hmm.
school. He does touring in high schools and does different performances. So I think he was at one of the shows in the Ottawa area. Well, it was in Vanier, I
Yeah,
think.
I believe it
Uh,
was Vanya. Yeah, no, because I
yeah,
just
but
what you were mentioning with the TV show in Norway and how he ended up landing himself a job educating like students. So I guess like that is almost where the opportunity came from Ottawa, where he does those tours now, I guess.
Yeah. So he like when we originally moved to BC, he was doing a lot more like music festivals and more performances because they were a bigger group back then. Like
Mhm.
he's got a few of his closest friends still in Vancouver. So they were more on tour, less of like the workshop style. And then uh, when we moved to Ottawa, he started teaching at the Shankman Art Center. I also helped him teach there. And from there, I think he landed just a project with, so we have Mask, Prologue, and Art Starts, which are like basically governing bodies that work within the education system. So they like give out brochures for different athletes, different artists. Um, and schools can book shows or workshops for whatever length and whatever budget like best allows them. So that's how he kind of got into the school system here, and it's been great for him because he can put all of his drums and his instruments in his car and then head off to, I don't know, he was in, I think, Sault Ste. Marie. Like they love him, or Sault Ste. Marie, they love him there. So he loves going up there every year. He spends a whole 2 weeks, teaches dance classes, teaches drumming classes, and then heads back. So, I mean, COVID has also taken a toll, like pretty big. Like he's not working anymore, and unfortunately, all artists have kind of taken that hit due to COVID. So he's excited to get back. We had our first like virtual show the other day, and it was all set up on the Zoom. We got him all set up, and he was really happy to kind of get back to his craft. So that's been
Yeah,
cool.
hopefully he can definitely get back to it as soon as possible. Like I said, I really enjoyed the show. He's again, I mean, what you just reiterated over the last couple of minutes is a testament to why he needs to get back doing these shows ASAP.
Right? The energy, were you like chanting too? I know he's like, oh yeah, whoa, and everyone was, yeah. So yeah, they're a good group. They're a great group.
Now, so from all the way from Norway to BC, now you're in Ottawa, at LaSalle. When does the University of Ottawa kind of get on the radar for volleyball too to become a student athlete?
I think it was so grade 10 is when I originally started volleyball. And I don't even want to say started because I spent most of the time on the bench. Like I was team cheerleader. I had like, yeah, everyone, I guess, had the idea of like the Mizuno knee pads. So, I showed up day one and I was in soccer shoes and like the working knee pads from Walmart, like the construction ones. So they were like, who is this 6 footer like showing up at volleyball practice, like tryouts, who'd never been here before? And so I did my grade 9, and in grade 10, in grade 10 is when I really started. Like, I guess these two coaches, so Yen and Eve, they're twins, and they are extremely into volleyball, and they just saw potential in me. So they asked, like, if I was willing to continue in volleyball, would I play on the senior team? Because they were like, if you train hard enough at this, like we could get you a scholarship. And I had never thought, I wasn't planning on going to university, to be completely honest. It just couldn't afford it. And then they mentioned scholarships, and I was like, oh, that'd be cool, pretty cool accomplishment to work towards. Like I didn't think I was in that category, but if they think it, might as well try it. So my grade 10, I played on the senior team, had a blast. They gave me a full like workout program that I followed. I was in the gym a lot, like 7 a.m. before school for an hour, just practicing arm swing movement, and then we practice at lunch, and then had team practice um, after school. Um, and then grade 11 decided to kind of play club too, because club wasn't in the mix. But then they had suggested, hey, if you could balance out your schedule well enough, like get into club, get playing with some like elite players. And I was very lucky to have a very elite team. I think my grade 11 10 out of the 11 girls had scholarships, and 4 of them were on our provincial team. Like Shina Joseph is on our national team. Sophie Carpentier was like a Canadian All-Star. We had Alex Durivage, who was also an All-Star, played at Ottawa U. So some pretty big influential names to like be around, and like a Vicky Savard, who is also like playing pro in Europe and has been huge in the volleyball community here. And I didn't realize how good like Ottawa's volleyball was. So they being around that environment really helped me kind of exceed my goals and show myself, okay, Kaly, like you can do this. You're big, but like you can move. You can be all right at this sport. Like this might be it for you. So
That's interesting because I guess with what you just said in the closing there wasn't really maybe any, we see this term now being used more and more today, like imposter syndrome. Like you just immediately was like, hey, no, I'm going to work hard enough and be here, even though this might be a whole different thing. And, where I didn't even really know volleyball was an option, but now, like, I didn't think a scholarship was a thing, but now apparently if somebody's going to tell me like, hey, you could probably get this, I'm going to go for it.
yeah, and like I don't think this imposter syndrome or like my confidence in volleyball hit until my second year. Like I was lucky enough in grade 12 to have about 10 offers. I
Mhm.
was the youngest player to make the team on the 2013 Sherbrooke Canada Games team. And the year before, I hadn't even made the tryout for the selection camp, which was odd to me. Like I'd gotten kind of a backdoor invite. Like someone got sick and couldn't make it, so they were like, "Hey, Kaly, do you want to come train for the week? You probably won't make the team, but come anyways. It'll be a good opportunity." And that was in my grade 11. So I'd gone, and then halfway through the week, I had a few university coaches tell me, "Oh yeah, like you got a good chance at making the team." And so my confidence kind of was like, okay, like here we go, 2 more days, like I got this, like I'm a good middle. And then I went to the exit interview, and they were just like, we're great, you're great, we're gonna monitor your last year, you just don't fit. And I was like, what you mean you just don't fit? Like there's usually people get, oh, your jump's not high enough, oh, your form was not great, or hey, you're emotionally unstable. um I didn't get any kind of feedback, so that kind of hurt. And then the next year is when they decided to bring me up to the U21 tryouts and try out for the Canada Games team. So I had clearly proven myself over that last grade 12 year to kind of get to a good spot on the provincial team. And by my 12th grade, I think it was the January of my 12th grade, I had narrowed down my options to either U of T or Ottawa U, and Ottawa U won. So
So when you hear this, like, "Hey, you don't fit," like for one, that's automatically like an infuriating statement because it's like, at least give me something where I can build on myself and fix, right? Like this doesn't make any sense. So how do you go from hearing that and maybe just like, say walking away from the whole organization and the whole sport as a whole and be like, you know what, like you're not giving me anything, you're not even showing me how to I can even improve so I am a fit, to actually, just continuing at it and plugging away and obviously, turning it into the career that you had.
I think for me, I did like have a week there where I cried and was angry and was like, maybe I just because I didn't pay enough money, or because I don't know, I hadn't been within the system long enough. Like it felt that like they had grandfathered a few athletes into the TMO year that year.
Mhm.
Um, and I was like, maybe I just wasn't a part of that. But they told me that they'd monitor me over the next year. So I was like, okay, if I improved and did better in that 1 week of just being with some top athletes, like what can I do after 1 year and like another full year of just being around some great athletes and putting myself in the right places to perform. So that was kind of my fuel. like how good can I get at this game, and how great can I make my chances for the team next year. And I kind of like, one, I wasn't, so I played him as a middle my entire 12th grade, both in club and at high school. And then I made Timo as a left side. So middles don't play back row at all, like defense at all.
Yeah,
And
typically left
right,
side. That's
so
like
I,
your best
like I guess
attacking defender almost.
right. And I was honestly, I was shocked because it was the end of our national championship. I think we lost and like we came fifth or sixth or something like that. So as I was like tearing up with my teammates, the coach that was going to coach the Canada Games team comes up to me and was like, I want you to try out. Like I'm sure your chances will be good at making this team, but I really want you to try out for our provincial Canada Games team. It's U21, but I think you'd be a great fit. So I was sad, but also like, wow, I got them. Like I wasn't even at the tryouts yet, and they're asking me to be a part of it. So my work had paid off.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost hey, we think you'd be a great fit. It's like, oh, okay, really? Well, how the turntables have turned kind of thing, the classic Michael Scott line from from the office. No, that's awesome. So now, OUA all rookie team. So when you make that transition to university, when you look at that achievement at the end of the year, from the outside looking in, hey, transition was pretty seamless, but obviously it probably wasn't as easy as that.
Yeah, my first year in university was, I remember being at nationals my first year and calling my mom and crying and be like, I quit. Like I'm leaving tomorrow. So to end off that year as like on the OUA All Star rookie team was very. I mean, I was grateful for it. That first year going into a group of girls who were already on their way to a national championship. Like they had come fourth in Canada the year before, and it was 4 rookies that year that were integrated to the team, and they had lost a core group of their seniors that year. So it was a little bit about the team finding their identity. I was also playing for a spot on the court, and my competitors were 4 other fourth years. Like it was the twins, Kayla Bell Hammond and Colleen Morelli, and then me for this one spot on the left side. So the English twins, untouchable. Like they solidified their spot for sure. So it was me fighting for another against 2 fourth years who I really enjoyed. Like I also loved everyone on the team. So it was hard to be like, oh, or I think it was my first glimpse of being like, oh, okay, so we have to compete for a spot, but then we're also competing against our teammates, against other teams. Like that dynamic was new to me. Like, or I guess the priority of that was big for that team that year. So there was a lot of, well, drama to say the least, especially being a rookie. Like adapting to school, adapting life, now trying to win a national championship with a group of people that I have not ever played with or against at all, was tough. But we made it that year. And then the summer, transitioning into my second year, is when I spent almost every single day trying to get to know Miriam and Kelsey. Like we had to work together, we had to eat together, we had to work out together, just to understand like what the goal was. And my second year was a lot more enjoyable, just playing, and we placed a lot higher. So we came 7th or 8th in my first year, and then we came 5th, beating UBC, who were like a 12-year first place they were on their streak, and had lost that year. So it was cool kind of sending the twins out on that note, and just being at another national championship.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because one thing that I constantly hear in terms of any anybody that I talk to that is either maybe currently or an alumni of the women's volleyball program at U Ottawa, they always kind of seem like, oh, like why'd you choose it, right? And there's this thing of like the dynamic that they're just like, I love the culture. Like it seems like that particular group just has such a strong culture. And I see it from how you chat about it, and the list kind of goes on and on. Who people, it's just a credit, it's a great group. So the fact that you had to mitigate and enter in that like internal conflict of trying to beat people out for a position, which I just assume with you're also building a pretty strong relationship with, because there is that strong culture dynamic within your team.
And I mean, I think we can all give the credit of the culture dynamic to Lionel. Like, I think one thing that they promise you at the beginning of the program is just you're gonna come out a good person. We're gonna support the person that you are, not necessarily like it's not all about volleyball. Sometimes it's not all about academics. Sometimes it's not all about life. Sometimes like whatever you want to accomplish here in terms of academics, life, volleyball, we're gonna try and support you in the best way to do so. And they also say like you're gonna run into people you don't like. You're gonna battle some demons of your own, and hopefully we'll be there to help you throughout that process. But it's never going to be easy. So that's kind of the mindset that everyone had leading into that, and you grow with the program, right? So
And as you're growing, how are you making sure that you're not, staying complacent and, excelling in your own individual game, and trying to, continue to get back to the highest level of volleyball that you guys can play in certain matches? Because I know too, in the 2015 2016 season, you were OUA all second team.
yeah, and I mean, we always have the goal. Like you always need a vision to where the program is, and I don't think we've stopped looking at that vision ever since. Like we always tell people, okay, top four in Canada, top four in Canada, top four in Canada. Like that is the ultimate goal that we want the team to be. And then once we reach that top four, okay, it's first in Canada. Like how good can we get? So I think having that mindset every day helps you avoid being complacent, like, and especially when all your teammates are on the same page, right? Because if you get left behind, you'll know. Like if you don't show up to practice and commit, if you're not giving your 100%, you'll know because you'll stick out like a sore thumb. Um, and that's one thing that I think Lionel really promotes is just this team, same page mentality, to get after our goals and to know the standards of that, right? Because some people are like, oh yeah, I'm giving my 100%, but your 100% is only 70% of what we think your full potential can be. So just reminding that like everyone has space for growth as well.
Yeah, that's a really important point. Like when you get into like a team aspect and stuff like that. And yeah, sometimes even, where you had said, oh yeah, I'm giving my 100%. Well, we think you're at 70% because of the potential that you still have, right? But then other people, that scale is different, right? They might deem their 100% as the 100%, but realistically, the team is in a different position where they might need more, they might even need less, right?
Yeah, 100%. And then it's up to that person to always like you always have a choice as an athlete, as a human. Like if you truly believe you're giving your 100%, but it's just not matching, well, maybe that environment is not meant for you. Like that's something that sometimes is hard to swallow, but also like if you feel you need to fight something constantly, then it's probably not the right fit for you.
Mhm. So now, from your perspective, because you've actually been with the team throughout this whole period from OUA to RSCQ,
Yeah.
what has that been like? Because that is a whirlwind of a difference. Like I know even for just kind of reflecting myself, when I was working with football, we would be in the OUA, and all of our road trips are across Ontario, which is like 8 hour, 5 hour bus rides. Like the travel wears on you, right? Now, when I did a few games and worked with hockey, even though they still are in the OUA, uh, men's hockey, they'll also have, there is still like Quebec teams in the OUA as well. So we would some road trips would be in like Montreal, or just like quick, like, well, you'd have McGill and Concordia all in
Yeah.
Montreal, so it's like a quick hour and a half. It's like a day trip, right? So
Yeah.
uh, it's a big difference, like a bigger difference than I think people might realize, and especially too, we're not even what I just mentioned is strictly road trips, but I'm curious with your take because you're seeing competition difference and everything like that.
Yeah. It was it's a pretty big difference. Honestly, if we're talking just competition, um, all your athletes are older in Quebec because they go through CEGEP and have no eligibility. So their first years are 21 and our first years are 18, right? Like, so their game is smarter, their game is longer, their game is more mature, like they're more stable in their lives. You're playing in a women's adult league, which is all intellect and IQ and how to play the game. You're also playing the same 6 teams 4 times, right? So it's not just like a one and done, like if we beat Nipissing once and we forget them. But if we lost to, like, once we lost to, I think, RMC, and it took us in the OUA and it took us way down the map, right? In the RCQ, you're playing against the same teams every week. So you know their competition. You're playing longer games. They're 4 sets to 5 sets. Um, there's also a higher chance of making it to nationals, right? You don't have 17 teams to go against. You're playing against 6. And if a team from Montreal, from the RCQ, makes a top 4, that's a second seed that we technically get. So if you could make it to top 2, then your chances to you're going to nationals, right? Um, so that's competition wise. Then travel time, 5 hours is the longest we'll go, and we'll usually travel on a Friday. So classes, you don't have to worry about missing any of them. Like your academics, you're covering, you're sleeping in your bed way more often. You're saving money because you're not spending it on food because you're back home. And then also the RCQ, I think, as a um, general rule, they can offer up to $5,000 of athletic scholarships, and the OUA is only 4,500. So you actually get more money playing in Quebec, which was really beneficial, honestly. And I think that's where my game personally went from, like, I'm just gonna hit a ball and it's probably gonna win, like we're probably gonna get a kill, to, okay, like what's my next move? What's my next move? Like it made me more of an intelligent player because we're seeing the same people all the time. Our game plans are changing. They're longer rallies. Like these girls are smarter. So that's been the challenge, but that's also been our biggest challenge coming into the league. Like, how do we make our 18-year-old girls play like they're 21 within the first year of being at U Ottawa? So yeah.
Yeah, I'm thinking of that, and immediately I start comparing to other sports, right? And it's like if you put an 18-year-old football team versus a 21-year-old football team, like that's going to be a blowout. Same thing with pretty much any sport like hockey, soccer. So, like, what do you think needs to almost be? What parts build the bridge to get there?
um I just think it's we'll have to start educating younger kids on the just like the intellectual side, the tactics of the game
Mhm.
sooner. Usually, like first year, we could probably develop them enough skill wise, got to get their weights and their physique up. But like if we can pair it with video as soon as possible, if we can get them learning that like you'll have to think a lot during this game, like we might not win right away in your first year, but like you'll have to understand that playing this game is more than just hitting a ball or jumping to have a block. Like you can't just have talent, you'll have to have smarts that accompany you with to make it in this league. So I think it's just drilling that down sooner, or getting them to understand and be mature about the game. But the more vets and the more people we have that go through the RCQ from start to finish, I think the better that information will be passed down, and the sooner from even athletes to athletes.
Yeah, I guess it's almost like a huge contingency plan, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
And
So
Yeah, no, it's something crazy with volleyball too, just like the different details and like how much strategy can actually really go into the game. I when I played in grade 8, I had a very intellectual coach, and it was like he was throwing some massive like, hey, here's basically, and we weren't even the A team. I was on the B team, and he was like, hey, here's what Team Canada is basically doing right now. uh, Try and figure it out, right? So I love him. I still talk to him every now and then when I run into him, and he is up there as like one of my all time favorite coaches. Just what he brought out of like myself as an individual, not just like an athlete. Super appreciative. But yeah, like I was a setter, and like he's like telling me all this and the different sections of the net and different tempos, and it's like holy smokes.
Setters are like the quarterbacks too, so you had a lot of thinking to do, right?
Well, we also I want to know your thoughts on this. So I believe in grade 8 we ran a two right side approach because myself I was predominantly a setter, but I'm also left-handed, right?
Okay,
And
yeah.
then our right side was left-handed, but he didn't really set. So basically, and I mind you, I still have a vertical of like -2 inches. Like I cannot get up above the net to save my life. So I was trying to learn the hitting aspect of it all, and he was trying to learn the setting aspect. But anyways, yeah, we ran with that in grade 8. What do you think of that
Well, like
strategy?
having a right-sided setter flip, it honestly gives you. I think there's definitely benefit to it. Like the more versatile you can be, the better, because the more the setter is learning about how to play right side with another right side and knowing the tactics of like, oh, where to be behind the block, like those playing those similar positions, just give it a more holistic sense. And also, like we played a little bit with that when Kira and Emily were around. So Kira is left-handed and had a wicked swing, but she was also an awesome setter. But Emily was also in her first year. So I think at the end of that year, we're like, oh, throw Emily in. We need Kira to rip a few balls on the wing. Like it permits you to change up. And also it gives a different look to your opponents, right? Like how many times we're like, isn't this a setter? And then they're thinking about that instead of thinking about the game. So it can be used in very different ways, but I'm all for it. Like I think there's just benefit to it. So
I'm gonna start making some calls, and I'm getting that grade 8 team back together. We're gonna find find some competition and start training again. Maybe make a comeback. Uh,
please film it.
I honestly volleyball. There's a lot of like fond memories. Like eventually, I think right before I got to high school, I had knee surgery going into my high school year, and by the time like I recovered from that, like tryouts had already like kind of gone through, like even for the B team, and then it was kind of like okay, you know what? I just want to focus on like hockey and then soccer in the summer. So that was when it separated for myself. But there was a lot of good memories because we have my hometown for some reason just a great volleyball program in terms of high school performance. Like the I even well sorry the high school team, but even like middle school and like uh it's there's like two towns that kind of became one town at one point, and one school it used to be called like Belleville. So even when Belleville was there, I mean, like I remember years where it's like we would lose one game a year, which was like the if we were grade 7, it would be the grade 8 A team is who we would lose to when we were in like grade 7, right? So it was always the top team of the year above, and yeah, just like it actually blows my mind reflecting, and maybe it's just like me being a young kid and thinking that it was so much bigger than what it is, but I do remember being in like random communities, like we'd travel and we'd play like an exhibition game, like 2 or 3 games, and the gym was packed.
Yeah. I remember those two. They're like volleyball is a lot of fun. It's a very high intensity, like quick action game. And I think that's why I loved it so much. Just like if I think back to playing soccer, I'd be like, oh, it's a lot of running for like that little intense moment of a goal. Like
Mhm.
great. But volleyball is like with every point is exciting, Like so that's what
I when you mention RSEQ rallies and how intense they are, like it's I those rallies were incredible. Like some of the best that I've ever like seen live. Like holy smokes! Like it's just the back and forth, and it's like Oh yeah, Kaly just smashed that and she got a point. Oh wait, it's up in the air again and they're going for another. Like, how did that happen? Like,
Yeah, I remember those, and they're frustrating as hell. But honestly, it makes you a better player at the end of the day because you're like, wow, you'd go to like an RMC or a Trent or a Nipissing in the OUA, and you'd just be like, oh, it's hard to find a rhythm because like one girl I think kicked a ball over and it was their 1 point that they
oh
got in 25. And like at the university level, like you want to expect more, you want to see better quality, you want to grow, and like that's what the RCQ kind of pushed. Um, and I'm not saying in the OUA you still have your Ryersons, you still have your Torontos, but you just don't play them as much, right? So you
mhm.
get 3 games that are very average. You'll go to Toronto, get your ass kicked, and then come back and be like, oh, yikes. But in the RCQ, you're just like, okay, let's battle it out because nothing is guaranteed. They could be hot one day, they could be not. So
Yeah, no, it's fair enough. Like when you see that, right? Like when the leagues are deep, like that's even in football, right? Like there's some weekends where we'll lose 61-0, but then we'll win like 40-0 kind of thing, right? There is when the leagues tend to get bigger, especially at the university level, there is that massive gap, right? But now, so fun fact about myself is I actually had the best weekend of, like, in terms of like one of my performances in volleyball was followed in terms of a performance level was followed up 3 days after by an almost near death experience. I almost died after a weekend of my best volleyball.
what? That's crazy.
So when I was in I want to say grade 9. Yeah, it would have been grade 9. We had in the second division gotten ourselves in the gold medal game, and we eventually lost like silver. But I personally I had a solid individual weekend, right? Like grade 9, walk away with like one of the tournament all stars. Like it was a provincial tournament too, so like I'm feeling great. Like well, obviously you want to win, but we weren't even really expected to kind of get into a final, let alone so. And then I was like, yeah, like, hey, like this is finally I'm getting good at this, right? Like it's like let's start training more, right? Turns out my appendix had other plans, and my appendix decided to not only inflame or do whatever they do.
Uh,
uh, they had it ended up rupturing in surgery. So essentially, it was one of the worst that the doctor had ever seen. More or less 20. If I was like 20 minutes later to the hospital, I would have died. Apparently, that's what they tell me. Who knows? That could be him trying to amp up the job that he did. And be, hey man, I really saved your life there. Just like, but yeah. So and here's the thing: it was my parents', I believe, 20th, 30th wedding anniversary. So they had just left to go to Vegas to celebrate, or because they were both turning 40. So and their anniversary is no, sorry, this was in November. So my dad's birthday is November 30th. My mom's is December 11th. So they
okay.
went to celebrate both of their 40th birthdays. So they were in Vegas and they were there for about 24 hours. And they get a call from my nan who was watching me at the time and was like, hey, yeah, Robert's going in for emergency surgery. He like basically almost died. Uh, Funny enough, my mom always feels bad that she wasn't there, but I was like, Mom, if you were there, I'd be dead because I would have been like, Mom, my stomach hurts. She would be like, go back to bed.
Yeah. She wouldn't have taken you seriously.
Yeah, and so my nan actually, she texts me on the anniversary every year, and she's just like, "Hey, my trout, like, hope you're doing good. It's been 8 years since your appendix went out, and apparently, um, I was so dumbfounded with the fact that all these doctors and nurses kept repeatedly asking me if I smoked, and I'm like 14, like no, I don't smoke, and so she's all. It's actually pretty funny how the text has evolved. It always used to be, "Hope you're still not smoking," LOL, and now it's like, "Hope you're still not smoking," and now vaping, LOL, because obviously vaping has
That's what the trend is now. That is hilarious. Your dad sounds like a great woman.
but yeah, so then I ended up like it was actually like pretty bad. So I had to be on IV, and I was like basically bedridden for like 2 or 3 weeks, right in kind of the bulk of the season, right after that grade 9 All-Star appearance, and then
Your
yeah,
parents
that
had other plans. You could have been the next volleyball king. Who
I
knows?
liked I like to hold on to that, like every now and then just be that guy who's like, yeah, you know what? You say you would have been in the NFL if you didn't blow out your knee. Well, guess what? I would have been on team camp in the volleyball if I didn't have an appendix rupture on me.
Love that. Love that. Yeah, I've been saying to myself, I've been trying to pick up like basketball a little bit now, like because so many people are like, Kaly, you'd be such a great basketball player. So now I'm like, well, shooting for the NBA, the WNBA now. Like, who else? So that's what I'm diving into as my next sport to take on.
Yeah, no, for sure. I am of the mindset though. I'm like, listen, if I was good enough, it would have happened regardless. But I'm very self aware on the fact that it was probably the fact that I'm 5'10", no vertical, just brutal defensively. Like,
Hey, be prideful of it. And it just ended back then, and it didn't
yeah,
continue.
just
Right?
honestly, I am. You know what? I'm strictly just gonna blame it on the appendix.
That's all it needs to be. It's really all.
It. It really does. So, but now, back to you with when things like start wrapping up at the University of Ottawa. Obviously, like going through the last year, like what was that roller coaster like? And then even too after, like you basically kind of you never left. Like you're still you still get to work there and you're coaching. So like that's a dynamic too, because now you're coaching people that you kind of played with for a little bit.
It's been hard to detach from the University of Ottawa, to be very honest. Post graduation, I really wanted to get away from volleyball. You know, once you do something for so long, you're just like, meh. I want to try something new. So my stubborn self, we moved to Montreal, right? And I stayed a year there. Or I don't even think I stayed a year, but I actually started work at a downtown spa. Like they had like a really in the old port, the really luxurious hotels and stuff. So I got a job as a receptionist. I was like, I never imagined myself being spa. I'm like sweatpants and t-shirts, nothing like self-care, like facial routines. Absolutely not about me whatsoever. But I mean, I got to meet a few celebrities, which is cool. Yeah, you get some perks within like the hotel industry. And I liked like traveling and that. Like I'd worked in a restaurant too, so I didn't know if I wanted to be a server or not. But I ended up absolutely hating that job. And I also had a very horrible boss, like someone who just did not know how to work with a team, did not know like what emotional intelligence was. She was very rude, very unaware. And the entire staff, I think we were 7, ended up quitting within that 6 months that we were there, 6 to 8
Holy
months.
smokes!
Yeah. So it was very bad. People were very poorly treated. But it also gave me insight to like, Kaly, okay, if you really don't like something, like get out as soon as possible. And I was lucky enough to still kind of keep coaching. I had asked Lionel if he knew anybody that was looking for a volunteer coach to just kind of stay. And Lionel was like, maybe you could do some recruiting on the side for you, Ottawa. So I ended up coaching for a cégep, Lionel Groux. It was like north of Laval, but awesome program. Like great humans, great kids. They also had like a very strong team that year. So it was cool kind of learning how the cégep system navigates, like what their resources are, because I never really understood cégep. Like I was like, oh, it's just high school, but no, they had a full like workout schedule. We're on the bus. Like it's very much university like it's right middle. Um, so that was cool to kind of get in touch with, and I got to know a few more people within volleyball Quebec. And then I can't remember what happened. I was just like, I'm not happy in Montreal. Lionel said there was a possible job opportunity back at U Ottawa, and I was like, you know what, I'm doing it. Like, I'm going. So got back here and was able to become like the high performance coordinator for our club teams for a year. And that was honestly that job taught me a lot. I was only, again, it had only been a year before like COVID hit and all that. But I basically micromanaged all 18 club teams. You're kind of like a mini athletic director in that position. You do some finances, you do eligibility, you help with like social media promotions, and you monitor some of the interworkings of teams. So that was really cool and kind of gave me the back end look into sports, because of being an athlete so long. And then the year went around and my contract was up and Christina was on her way out, and Lionel just said, hey, it'd be cool if you could slide into this job. We'll pay you more. It's assistant coaching. It's basically not a job for you. And so I took it. Yeah.
No, it seems like a good fit. So, what's the? Are you a player's coach? Are you a coach's coach? Are you the? Hey, I'm gonna give you the inspirational speech, or hey, I'm gonna chew you out one. Have you figured that out yet?
Oh, I I want to say I'm a player's coach, but I don't think I figured it out necessarily. I know that I'm a goof, so I'm working on not being as goofy because maybe people take me a little more seriously. But I definitely I love the inspirational speeches, but I don't think I'm there yet. Lionel's got like 35 years on me, so I just like have been taking in as much knowledge as I can over the last year. And it's been tough because you can't really see it. Like you see the individual details that grow in certain players, and you know, like, oh, we've been working on this together, so it's cool to really see this person develop. But because we haven't seen it in a game, I'm just like itching to see like Tristan whack a ball, or like I want to see it translate to a game. So I can't wait. I can't wait for next year. Like there's already some kind of schedule in place. I think things are going to end up happening. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, fingers crossed. There are so many talented athletes that I'm like, man, like, what is gonna happen here? Like, I'm like, it's been so long since we've seen them in gameplay because I've been taking in a lot of boxing, and that kind of sport like MMA, like UFC, and there's something that they always say. It's like, oh, like which you know kind of translates everywhere, where it's like, everybody's the king of the pads kind of thing, or the winner of the pads, and like just sort of a champion on the bag, something along that lines, which basically like anybody can look good like in the practice kind of thing, but how's that going to translate when it's game time, right?
Yeah. So I'm hoping, like, there's been a lot of development from this young team this year. Like I'm pretty blown away at how easy it's been to coach these girls. And I think they've just worked so hard. So to see them come back, especially from a losing season the year before, and to like beat a few people, like I know we have the confidence. Like I do have the confidence that these girls will win a bunch of games. So I'm excited to see that kind of translate.
Now, how much are you working on the social media? Because I know you've done a few things, but also the TikTok trends on the GG's Women's and Volleyball Insta has been absolutely fantastic. You just throwing Lionel right under the bus there.
That was magic. Um, I have been working on the social media account. It was a big issue that we wanted to tackle even in previous years. Like volleyball's been good, but not great. And with all this time in COVID, I was like, this is a perfect tool for also recruiting. Like there are so many kids online on Instagram that are looking at your things, that are looking like, this is how we can outwardly give what the culture of our team is, especially if that's like one of our key things in this program is like team culture. So it's been fun for me to kind of plan, like there's a group of us that puts together things that they want to see on social media, and it's been cool working with like Spencer on trying to figure these things out. But yeah, the TikTok reel of pass the phone challenge was
So
mint.
has Lionel still in the wind on that, or has he figured out what you done?
Well, I think he knew what I was doing. He had to, because I texted him saying, "Hey, any chance you could just send me a video of your face, like 5 minutes? You could add in a smile." And that's the TikTok that I got. He was like, um, uh, but he's been full in on, like, he created his own little Instagram page now, and he's like, all right, here we go, like following and asking me questions on like, what does this mean and what is a reel. So it's been teaching him a little bit the ways of the kids.
In terms of recruitment, it is such a underrated tool. I mean, there are there are walk-ons who I remember just like this is for anybody who kind of manages, teams that recruit their social media, because you see in the pros, like, people complain to the pro team accounts. They're just like, hey man, I'm just the social guy. I don't actually make the trade. But at the university level, like, it's a tool. Like, that was honestly for myself too how I built value with Nate, right? Like, I'd watch film and I'd be like, hey, like, I'd always send him everything because I know my football mind is just not to where any of those guys are. But I'd always like, okay, here's a quick little thing, and I'm like, hey, actually, I think just from the measurables, we kind of got something here, right? And there's some walk-ons who literally came through Instagram DM.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. We've had a few recruiting emails saying like, oh, I love the stuff that you're doing on social media. How do I join the team? Cool. Like, we never would have in the years prior been able to do that. And I think even a few years from now, it's going to be an even bigger tool. Like, people want to be represented, kids want to be seen, kids want to know, and it's an easy way for them to get to know the interworkings of the team, right? And the one thing about GGs that I think we also need to work on is creating this hype. Like Ryerson has a hype to them. Western has a hype to them. Queens has a hype to them. I think GGs we're still on our way to building that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
I think we're definitely on the right track. I'm really old habits die hard. I keep saying we, but I've recognized now that I'm the old guy. I'm the alumni. But yeah, I think it's definitely on the right track for sure. I'm excited to see what happens. It's like, yeah, with social media and stuff like that, it's so it's incredible to see some of the stuff that you can do, especially with sports teams. And I mean, we were chatting a little bit. Congrats again. The video that you were working on, won the award and stuff. I mean, feel free to elaborate on that there.
Yeah. So how about I just give you the crash course on what this like EDI year of equity and diversity has been, at least for me. But since the murder of George Floyd last year, that kind of struck the world, I think, and entered a lot of conversations, a lot of uncomfortable conversations, a lot of thought to previous experiences and what they meant then and what they mean now. But basically, I think it was in end of June, I touched base with a few athletes and a few people and put together these small speaker sessions, where we'd have one Black alumni from Ottawa kind of speak on their career paths. And I was interested, like, personally in my life, I was still kind of figuring out where I want to go, what are my directions. So speaking to these people and getting them to speak to our athletes, our Black athletes, would be great. And they were looking for some inspiration and some connections to make, especially that we were all on lockdown. So that lasted about 2 months, and then the discussions with Sue, and we kind of had a group of our coaches, like our Black coaches, had gotten together and spoken to them like what we'd like to see seen in varsity and what sectors can we improve to address racism and spark the conversations and continue the conversations. So that started, and then Ottawa, the academic side, had not done so well per se. There was an incident with a teacher and the use of the N word, and that kind of sparked flames amongst the Black community here. and amongst our athletes. So a group of athletes, beginning with a few on the women's rugby team, had put together a group that we now call the Black Student Advocacy, Black Student Athlete Advocacy Council. So they got together and asked me to actually join and see where I can help. So this year I've kind of been the liaison between varsity and Sue and the structure there and the BSAEC. So the group of those athletes, and we've all now worked together as a collective unit to get, like, we just wrote up our first anti-racism action plan. So we've got like different initiatives that we're going to see over the year be put in place, and we have like a 3 to 5 year plan on how Ottawa was going to better their equity and diversity initiatives. And that was what was fueled by this group of athletes, myself, the group of coaches. So we've met with the presidents a few times. They did a bunch of press interviews. Like, it's been a pretty wild ride. And these kids, again, this group of kids have just been ridiculously good at everything that they do. Like, I don't see how they balance sport, life, academics, and now battling social justice issues. Like, it's crazy to me that they've dedicated this much time and have been just elite at everything that they do. So for Black History Month, we were warned 2 weeks prior that the university didn't really have anything in place, media wise, initiative wise, for GGs at all, for the month. And we were like, ooh, that's gonna be an issue. So a group of us, mainly Adrian, who's a new athletic therapist, and myself, JB, Nate, and Jen, kind of got together and figured out a month plan on what we wanted to see, and we touched base with the athletes and talked to them about what they wanted to see. So we just did an initial video first, just accepting and opening Black History Month, which me and my sister, I think I texted her one night and said, here's a draft of a spoken word. Can you review it and see if you can make changes? My sister is extremely creative and like good at anything she picks up. So she like reworded a few of it. I sent it off to Adrian. He looked over it and then sent it to Spencer and said, hey, could we make a video out of this? And that was kind of the opening. It talked about slavery. It talked about Canadian, like Black Canadians and their contributions during Black History Month, what it was about, and then some snippets about what our athletes were going to see for this month. So then week per week, we did like alumni podcasts. We had like a Haitian soup jumu live that we did with, yeah. And that was hilarious. I absolutely loved it.
Fred is incredible. I love him so much, man. I miss seeing him every day.
Yeah, he's awesome. So he killed it. It was the funniest thing. I think it was the first time we also saw Creole being spoken on any kind of university platform. Wow. There was a lot of people from the Haitian community that had joined on the IG Live, and it was just like flags and fun and soup, and they're speaking about Creole, and we're learning about the history. So that was like a really cool. I think that was one of my favorite moments of Black History Month. And then the closing video was another text to my sister saying, "Hey, I think we can find a cool way to like wrap up Black History Month and say like, hey, the BLM initiatives and everything, it's been a work in progress, but it's going to continue to go past Black History Month. Like that's ultimately the goal, to get on an even fair plane with every culture, not just the Black community." So we put that together, and that's the video that came out at the end there. I think it came out March 3rd, and honestly, I cried for that video just because it hit a really, like, it hit a heartstring. And knowing all the effort that we as a collective group had put into that month, it was really rewarding to see it be appreciated by so many members.
Yeah, I mean, it was like that. It left me speechless. Like all the content, right? It was absolutely incredible, and it's definitely needed. And I think how you kind of ended off with just, growing the initiative past, the month to make it a year long thing and make it recognizable that it needs to be a year long thing, and you need to have those uncomfortable conversations and to keep striving and growing is, yeah, it's such an important message.
Yeah. And the university, at least sports services, I mean, large institutions, tough to manage. But varsity athletics have been extremely just supportive of the movement, as especially as of late. Like, we've worked together as a cohesive unit. We're aligned with not only varsity but like with the OUA and the youth sports and their equity and diversity initiatives. Like, U Ottawa was top 5 in the collection of race-based data in the OUA. So we actually won another little gift card for being the first and the most students and coaches to answer some of the surveys and reflect. So we've done awesome as a varsity sector, and I really can't wait to see what will come next.
Hmm. So I guess what's next for Cali? Like what's on the schedule?
I don't know. There's a lot. I think with the amount of people that I've just been able to connect with over the last month, like, my head has just gone like, boom, here's all the ideas. Um, right now, a dream goal of mine, I think in the next 5 to 10 years, would be actually to move back to Africa and to develop like a sports program there that would either like feed into a larger organization, or become my one on my own, right? So that's kind of the goal. I've been speaking to a few people within like the NBA who have developed, like, who are in charge of like the grassroots development, and see how they've made it such a great working structure for youth in underdeveloped countries. So I'm learning as much as I can, and I'm trying to be a coach at the same time. But I think that dream right now is just sitting on the top of my shelf. So it's finding ways to get there.
I I love that. Like, I wish you nothing but the success in that, because I think with you leading that forefront, like that is just going to be something that excels drastically.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, it's man, I really do. I truly really want to see that. That's going to be exciting. So hopefully I guess that's the long term. What's the short term? What's tomorrow look like?
Oh, tomorrow, getting the vaccine.
Oh,
Actually,
wow.
I'm getting the vaccine, which is great. Like, it's something to look forward to. But I also need to finish tomorrow. I need to finish my coaching certifications. I'm still in the process of getting them done. So it's just passing the evaluations, and getting ready for another season of coaching, and seeing how I can personally refine my skills to best help these girls.
Yeah, a lot on the go, eh?
Yeah. It's busy. It never stops. Like, as soon as I get going, like, you keep on pushing through. As soon as I get lazy, I'm like, no.
Time to go for a run.
Yeah, I did a 10K today, and then I was
Nice.
like, done. Yeah.
I say that because I guess I think we mentioned it, but just more context. Like we're in a running group now, which is I've just been kind of running on by myself for the last few months, and I did one with OSAS last month, and I enjoyed it. And then I've been seeing yours all the time, so I was like, oh yeah, like I'll hop on there too.
Yeah, it actually started as like well, it was just me, and I just put the question out there, who wants to join on this run? And I think it was some guy that I never met, never saw, and I think he's like the co-owner of Persevere or something like that.
Oh
It's one of
yeah, the media coverage
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
So he was like, "Yeah, I'll join." And I didn't know that he would run like 9K every second day. So I was like, all right. But also I had to compete because I like talking trash. It gets me motivated. So I think it was just me, him, and maybe one of my other friends who were competing that month. And then the second month, like, I put out there, okay, it's happening again. Whoever wants to join. And then I had 6 other people, and now we're at 22. So
Oh wow.
yeah, pretty good. I mean, the goal is just to get people moving, right? Like I do not enjoy running, but it's the only consistent thing that I've been able to kind of do over the last few months at least. So yeah.
No, that's a good point in terms of consistency. Like I've tried to pick up so much, and like you get into the gym and you get your routine, and then oh, okay, now gyms are closed, right? Do your boxing classes, okay, you get into a little bit cardio, but the one thing that has just held this whole time is just being able to go out and run, right? And I think a big thing for me is I've changed just some of the like I'm pretty lucky in the sense that I'm only like say 2.7 kilometers from the office, so I'll just
Okay.
run to work and then come back. So and then that's like 5.5K, and then try and do something maybe a little bit longer in the evening, right? So
Yeah, no, and I mean, if you can fit it in your schedule, like you start seeing the results of it, and you're like, ooh, like, oh, my tempo has gone up. Oh, like I feel I've been feeling great. It gets you outside. I can turn my phone off for a bit and disconnect, just check in with some music. I also like on the Nike app, there's a coach. Like you can have guided runs. So sometimes I will like have a little mindfulness run, and they'll tell me, I don't know, 4 or 5 things that you should do or think of in your life. So I found that cool.
yeah, I've really been enjoying it, and it's I'm competitive in nature. Like anything that I kind of do, I want to do it. And like the thing is with running, obviously, like you get the group and you get the leaderboard and you're competing with other people, but it's one of those where you have this mental battle with yourself. And when like I smashed my 1K, my fastest 1K in terms of like the last like basically like all that, like my longest runs and stuff like that are all like 2021, right? But the fastest, like the pace stuff, was like from when I was in high school. And like I broke that the other day, and it's like I can now. What you're telling me at 23, more out of shape still from what I was in high school, and I'm beating myself. Like
Yeah.
again, maybe that's another testament to why I wasn't a great athlete. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's a big component of it.
yeah, it's huge. Like for me, even a 5K, I can't remember. I don't think I ever ran a 5K past like my first year of university, and even at that, like I never considered myself a runner. Like a lot of people are like, "Yeah, you're into it or you're not," but it's been just very very easy, very convenient, and the fact that now I have some people that I can compete with, I can throw up a leaderboard, I get some DMs of people like, "Oh no, they barely. I'm gonna go out and run one more today." It's just fun to like connect with people too.
I slacked off yesterday because I had a busy day, and I was like, I'm doing pretty good right now. Like and then I woke up and looked at I was like,
Carl is
man,
right
I,
there.
classic me getting overconfident. Like it was, it's like in any sport, it's like when you get overconfident. Like say you're up by 10, next thing you know, you foot's off the gas, and the opponent catches right up, and sure,
Well,
that is exactly what happened.
he texted me today, and he was like, "Oh, I thought today was gonna be my day off, but I guess not. I guess I'm running." And I was like, "Okay, like it's gonna be a competitive month here, but it's good. It's good."
Yeah, I mean, I've just like I said, I think I'm no runner, and I think if we put all of us on the same line and we all say go, I would be tailing way behind. So that's actually one of the things that I kind of enjoy in the sense because it's more or less strictly on distance too, right? Like it's not actually at times because I would be way down below every.
Yeah, and I was like, "Oh, like time." I don't think pace. Like, there's people who are like 10 times faster than me at anything. Like I'm looking at some girls who run professionally, and they're like a whole 15 minutes under my 10K, and I was like, "Oh my god." Like I thought I was doing all right. Um but the goal of it is just to get people moving, right? Like if it's a 70K minimum, then hey, you can hit that, great. If you want to continue, you can continue. Like, but that's the beauty of it. It can be as collective as it can be individual.
Yeah, and 100% right, and that's the thing too because it's even just yeah, again, I think I'm more or less repeating myself now, but it is just one of those things where it just seems to be like a pretty decent system where it's like, yeah, like I've never really pictured myself a runner. Like I said, I always look for different ways to compete. And for one, too, I mean, I've mentioned a couple times now on this podcast over the last few episodes, just like my weight loss journey and stuff like that, and how I've gone from I'm at like 260 right now, so I've gone from 319 to 260 ish. That's kind of yeah, thank you. And that's been a big part of it though is the running and even just getting the steps in, right? So always trying to get like 10,000 steps. Like I'm looking at my watch there now and I'm like, "Oh, like obviously I'm an hour and a half ahead too, so I'm like, oh, 5,200 steps and it's getting a little late. Oh, does that mean I got to be out in the cold for a little longer tonight now, right? But yeah, that's the one thing in terms of the exercise component of it that no matter what I can keep consistent just because no gym, like it's not a membership, like it's no third party kind of thing, right? It's you, yourself, and I. Me, myself, and I.
Yeah, no, I totally get that too. And I've had just a very small weight loss journey from last October to now. And it's just sometimes you get addicted. You get in a rhythm, and once you get in your rhythm, you're like, oh, I'm like addicted almost to the results that it gives and the happiness that it brings. Like you forget how much your mind is affected by your body,
Hmm.
right? So once you see those benefits, you're just ultimately, I was like, oh, I feel like a happier person. So
Yeah, it's huge, and like the thing is too is it's like I'm realizing like my cardio is just better, and like I said, I've been boxing for the last few months, and again, it comes back to like my competitiveness, and I look back on the first classes, and I would leave feeling like, okay, that was fun, but like, man, like I'm out of shape, like I'm not good, like, and now all of a sudden, like I'm on the bag and like I'll do the combos and stuff like that, and I'm like, holy, like I feel like like I feel confident. I'm like, yeah, like let's put me in a ring with somebody. Like I can compete. Like that's might be a little bit naive. Who knows? I probably get myself knocked out because I maybe way too overconfident. But yeah, it's huge.
that's awesome. Oh, good for you. I'm happy to hear that. I'm excited. Maybe I'll see you in the ring in a year from now and you'll just be like knocking some guy out.
Hopefully it'll be Jake Paul. I'll be knocking out.
yeah, yeah, I've been seeing the videos of that. Like, oh, his hat got snatched. I was like, oh, here we go again.
The yeah, that clip came out today. That like I I'm amazed at like the showmanship of everything, but like at some point I do, and maybe I just sound like a complainer, but Floyd Mayweather is one of the greatest of all times. Like I get it if you want to fight him and you got to build it up, but there's kind of more ways to do that than actually just like he's supposed to be fighting your brother in like 4 weeks and you're snatching his hat like that to me it like I get it you're trying to sell the tickets but I just feel like there's a line and when you have the greatest of all time like there does need to be some form of respect even if you don't like them.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. It's also the media and the theatrics of everything, right? Especially in sport nowadays, like the hype, like how it's a business, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, yeah, we lose that like human respect. Oh, this is actually legitimate, and not just for the show. So I totally agree with you on that.
Yeah, that's I mean, yeah, the just talking about boxing like the logo like that logo like I don't really want to talk about Jake cuz he's but Logan and Floyd the fact that like those two will be fighting like that is incredible like just like you were uploading YouTube videos and now all of a sudden like you're getting this opportunity to box one of the greatest of all times like
In the world, like
good for you but also like how and like I'm sure there's millions of other fighters who are like I've been busting my ass in all these amateur fights and you're walking in here and fighting for like but you know in I think one of my favorite interviews so far Floyd was like why would I train to fight an actual fighter and make like 30 million when I can fight this YouTube guy and get 100 million? I'm like, that's a very strong point.
that is yeah, that is very factual, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
like so that it'll be interesting nonetheless. I mean, the uh, theatrics of it all and stuff like that, I still sometimes roll my eyes, but it's at the end of the day, I am trying to see who and what happens, right? But
Right?
yeah,
We can't necessarily avoid it, right? Sometimes it's like, oh, the hype is there, so might as well sit back and watch it. Like,
and it's been nice. I mean, I FaceTime Ty and we watched the fight. Well, like we were watching it separately together, if that makes like we both had it on and we were kind of reflecting back and forth. And it's like for the most like we're not going to do that for every NFL football game because that's every Sunday kind of thing, right? So it's one of those where it's like, oh, this is a one off kind of thing. Like, you know, I FaceTime him for the Super Bowl. I FaceTime him for like different fights. So it is still one of those things where I guess you get that level of connectivity.
okay, yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, in a way. But yeah, I mean, we've covered everything. I think, like so from from volleyball to musicians, Halle Berry. It's
A
been
lot. I do a lot of talking. Sorry, I just blabbed
that,
it.
you can't apologize. Like this is the perfect place to do it, right? Like,
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
and I will promise you that nobody. I don't think anybody will ever out talk myself. I am the biggest one for talk. But do you because if you said that like you talk too much, I say that too, and I'm wondering if you feel the same way sometimes. Do you some like when you leave over or sorry when you leave conversations, do you sometimes like get into your own head and you're like, oh man, like I talked way too much and I overthink a lot and I'm like, oh, like why'd I go on and on about that?
100%, 150%. I am also an overthinker,
Hmm.
and it's been really bad as of late. Like, I just get like anxious because I'm like, oh my god, I might have said too much, and maybe they thought it was very unnecessary, but I said it anyways. So ultimately, once I just swallow the fact, I'm like, hey, let's hope if someone really doesn't enjoy my talking, they'll just tell me.
Yeah, that I love that point because I've just been like, I'm like, hey, you know what? Like, at the end of the day, this is, I guess, who I am. So I gotta stop like worrying about it too much and be that. But I do like that point where it's like, hey, yeah, you know what? Actually, probably if somebody was like, hey, zip it, they'd probably be like, hey, zip it.
Right, or you just you'd feel that, like, you just recognize that, I think. So that's my view on it.
Yeah, no, I honestly like this has been everything and so much more that I've had for you this evening. Like I said, I think we've covered it all. Now, obviously, this is the part of the show where I just hand the show over to you. It's your show now. You can chat about whatever you want, life lesson, childhood story. I mean, legitimately anything. Like it's your show now.
um Maybe I had like a good quote that I wrote down the other day. Maybe I'll share it here. Well, if I can find it, but I don't think I can actually. um but I've written it on my board here. So it's be be where your feet are and start building your home. And by home, at least to me, it's been like career and what you want to do. Like all your actions kind of build into the house that you're building for yourself. And if you're going to be in your mind all the time, like make sure it's a nice, fun place to be. So that's my little last comments there that I've been reflecting on as of recent.
I think that's a fantastic spot to leave it off on. Really solid message, Callie. Thank you so much for joining us this week. It's been a blast catching up. I'm so excited to, see. I know they're dreams right now, but I do in fact know it'll be reality for you one day. And just like I said, it's been so nice. From even the opportunities that you've granted me, I've been grateful for. Just to the extra work photographing your dad and seeing like him do his thing and all that. I love it, and you've been a fantastic individual you get to know over the years. And yeah, so thanks so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you, Robert. I really appreciate you, and I support you on the rest of your career moves too. So never hesitate reaching out for me for anything.
Of course. And thank you guys for listening to another episode of Greels Reels. What a fantastic episode. Can't wait to get back next week on Sunday. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to, leave us a review, share it with a friend, comment, like, subscribe, any of that, fun stuff. But hey, in the meantime, stay best kind.